In October 2014, Victoria's Secret launched a campaign with two simple words that ignited one of the most explosive marketing controversies in modern fashion history: the perfect body. The advertisement featured 10 supermodels in matching lingerie, standing shoulder to shoulder beneath the slogan. Their bodies were nearly identical, same height, same proportions, same poses. The image was polished, intentional, and unmistakably confident. Within days, the backlash was so intense that the billion-dollar brand quietly altered its messaging. But by then, the damage was already done. A Change.org petition gathered over 30,000 signatures demanding accountability. The hashtag #IamPerfect trended worldwide as women posted photos challenging the brand's narrow definition of beauty. What began as criticism quickly evolved into a global conversation about who advertising was really for and who it left behind. This is the story of how two words became a cultural turning point, exposing deep cracks in a fashion empire that had dominated women's lingerie for decades, and how one advertisement helped accelerate a shift that permanently changed the industry. To understand the fallout, you first need to understand the empire Victoria's Secret built. For more than 40 years, Victoria's Secret perfected a formula that turned lingerie shopping into fantasy. Their marketing didn't just sell bras and underwear. It sold aspiration, confidence, and the idea that buying into the brand meant buying into a better version of yourself. From the beginning, Victoria's Secret positioned itself differently from traditional lingerie retailers. Stores felt glamorous rather than practical. Shopping bags were glossy. Displays were dramatic. Everything about the brand communicated that this wasn't just underwear, it was an experience. The Victoria's Secret fashion show became the centerpiece of that fantasy. Airing annually, it was watched by hundreds of millions of viewers worldwide. It wasn't just a runway show, it was a spectacle. Supermodels weren't simply wearing lingerie, they were wearing wings, diamonds, and carefully constructed personas that defined the ultimate standard of beauty. The angels represented perfection, as Victoria's Secret defined it: tall, extremely thin, and predominantly white. They walked runways in elaborate costumes worth more than most people's annual salaries, surrounded by celebrity performers and cinematic lighting. The messaging wasn't subtle, it was direct, repeated, and deeply influential. For years, the formula worked. By the early 2000s, Victoria's Secret controlled roughly 40% of the US intimate apparel market. Their pink line dominated college campuses. Their fragrances filled department stores. Their name was synonymous with lingerie itself. The brand's success wasn't accidental. It tapped into desire at a psychological level. Women didn't just want lingerie. They wanted transformation. They wanted to feel confident, admired, and chosen. Victoria's Secret promised that feeling, even if only symbolically. The message was everywhere and always the same. Beautiful meant thin. Sexy meant one body type. Perfect had one definition. For a long time, that definition went largely unchallenged. But by 2014, the cultural landscape had shifted. Social media changed the relationship between consumers and corporations. Audiences were no longer passive. They could respond instantly, publicly, and collectively. At the same time, the body positivity movement was gaining momentum, encouraging women to question unrealistic standards and reclaim ownership over how they viewed themselves. Younger consumers were becoming skeptical of aspirational marketing that felt unattainable or exclusionary. Brands like Dove had already shown that authenticity could outperform fantasy. Real people, real bodies, and real stories were beginning to resonate more than airbrushed perfection. Consumers no longer wanted to be told what perfection looked like. They wanted to see themselves reflected back. Victoria's Secret either failed to recognize that shift or chose to ignore it. That decision would prove costly. The Perfect Body campaign launched in October 2014 to promote the Body by Victoria lingerie line. On the surface, it followed the same formula the brand had used for years. 10 models arranged in a straight line, identical bras and underwear, perfect lighting, perfect symmetry. Their appearances were so similar they felt interchangeable. Above them, in bold capital letters, appeared the slogan that sparked global outrage: the perfect body. Not a perfect body, not your perfect body, the perfect body. The phrasing mattered. The message was unmistakable. There was only one acceptable way for women to look, and Victoria's Secret had defined it. The campaign appeared everywhere at once: store windows, print magazines, online banners, social media feeds. Victoria's Secret invested heavily to ensure millions of women would see that message repeatedly, often without context or explanation. The backlash was immediate. Within hours, social media erupted with criticism. Women began posting photos of themselves holding signs that read, "I am perfect," reclaiming the phrase Victoria's Secret had claimed for itself. What began as isolated posts quickly became organized resistance. 3 British university students, Frances Black, Gabriella Kuhn-Turides, and Laura Ferris, channeled that outrage into action. They launched a Change.org petition demanding an apology and accountability for promoting a harmful, exclusionary message. Thousands of signatures poured in within days. Women shared deeply personal stories about body image struggles, eating disorders, and years of feeling inadequate after being exposed to advertising that repeatedly told them they weren't enough. For many, the ad wasn't just offensive, it was triggering. The story quickly moved beyond social media. Fashion publications questioned whether Victoria's Secret still understood its audience. News networks debated whether the industry needed to fundamentally rethink how it portrayed women's bodies. What began as a marketing misstep had become a cultural reckoning. Celebrity voices joined the conversation. Models, actresses, and influencers publicly criticized the campaign, pushing the backlash fully into the mainstream, exactly where Victoria's Secret's influence mattered most. And while Victoria's Secret faced scrutiny, competitors were paying attention. A small New York lingerie brand called Dear Kate released a direct response. Instead of professional models, they featured real women, entrepreneurs, doctors, artists, and executives with different body types, ages, and backgrounds. Their tagline read, "The multitude of shapes perfect bodies can take." The contrast was intentional. Where Victoria's Secret showed uniformity, Dear Kate showed diversity. Where Victoria's Secret sold fantasy, Dear Kate sold reality. The response went viral. Women shared the image across social platforms, many saying it was the first time they had ever seen bodies like theirs represented in lingerie advertising. The message was clear. The industry standard was being challenged. Other brands followed. Aerie launched its unretouched #AerieReal campaign, pledging to stop airbrushing models entirely. Savage x Fenty built its entire identity around inclusive casting, turning diversity into a competitive advantage. The industry was changing, and Victoria's Secret was no longer leading it. Facing mounting pressure, Victoria's Secret quietly adjusted the campaign. Without issuing a public apology, they changed the slogan to "A body for everybody." The imagery itself, however, remained unchanged. Critics rejected the move as superficial. Changing words without changing representation missed the point. To many, it felt like a cosmetic fix rather than a meaningful acknowledgement of harm. The Perfect Body campaign didn't cause Victoria's Secret's decline, but it became a symbol of how disconnected the company had grown from the women it claimed to serve. In the years that followed, revenue declined from roughly $7.5 billion to just over $6 billion. A brand once considered untouchable suddenly felt outdated. Nearly a decade later, Victoria's Secret is still rebuilding trust and relevance in a market it once controlled. The Perfect Body controversy marked the moment when fantasy stopped being enough, and when consumers made it clear that inclusion was no longer optional. The lesson for brands today is simple. You can build an empire selling aspiration, but when that aspiration excludes the people you depend on, someone else will sell them reality. Perfect was never about the bodies in the photograph. It was about making customers feel like they belonged. When Victoria's Secret forgot that truth, the empire began to crack.